National Capital Tracker's wiring harness installation video. You should receive the harness in a bag, 2 large clamps, 1 small clamp, 2 small screws, and 2 large screws. To begin, remove all of the old wiring harness. With the wiring removed, you should be left with the track wires only. If your track wires are larger than 16 gauge, you can keep them as long as they have spade terminals on the end of them. If not, either add spade terminals, or if your wires are too small, you'll need to replace them with the pigtails that are in the kit. The next step is to drill a hole in the center brace to accommodate the new wires. We suggest you use at least a 3/4 inch drill bit to do so. Drill a hole approximately in the center of the module through the center brace. Once you've done that, you can take the harness out of its bag and unwrap it. This is the female end of the harness. This is the male end of the harness. The convention is the same as it always has been. So the harness will lay on the module like this. In order to pass the wires through the hole that we just drilled, we need to actually remove the male end of the harness from the terminal block. Do that by removing all of the screws. The male end of the harness removed, pass the green and the orange wire, which were not connected to the female end when you received it, through the hole, along with the other 6 wires. You might have to pass them through a few at a time to get the terminals through. With the terminals through the center brace, reconnect the harness wires to the terminal block in color order as you remove them. With the harness now reassembled and captured, you can now install the green and the orange wires into the female end of the harness. To do this, thread the green and the orange wires through the mesh sleeving that's supplied on the wire. And install the wires in the terminal, in the end, with the tongue on the contact facing the tongue on the connector. You should hear an audible click when they engage. Pull on the wire to determine that they are secured. At this point, we're going to attach the terminal block to the table. This is done using the 2 large screws. If you have a 1/4 inch tabletop, you're going to need to add a little bit of spacer material underneath the terminal block in order to make sure that you don't put the screws through the top of the table. Measure 20¼ inches from the inside of the module frame and mark it on the tabletop. This should be the approximate location of the terminal block. So I'm now going to put my piece of spacer material down on the table, and then I'm going to align my terminal block with it, and I'm going to just put a single screw in the terminal block. Either side, it doesn't matter at this point which side you put the screw in. Just put one. The other screw is installed with the small cable clamp upside down over the top of it. Feed the green and orange wires through the cable clamp, and then put the screw through the clamp and secure the other side of the terminal strip. The remaining 2 screws and the other 2 cable clamps are to secure the wire to the tabletop. Approximately a foot from each end of the module, attach a cable clamp to the table. At this point, the harness is securely installed on the module, and you're now ready to connect your track to the harness. We're now going to install the track feeds into the terminal block. If your track feeds are good, in other words, they're 16 gauge or larger, like these are, then you can retain them. The exception being that this harness has a commonly spade-lugged set of grounds. The new harness separates the ground wires, so these wires will need to be separated and re-terminated. Separate all of the ground wires. It's also important to note if you have switches on your modules and they are connecting one main line to the other, all of the rails need to have insulating track pins installed. Otherwise, you'll cross the grounds in the track, which is not good with this harness. Install new terminals using the appropriate crimping tool. With the wires re-terminated, we can now install them. The next thing we need to do, because we have good wires, is remove the supplied pigtails from the harness. You don't need to remove the screw all the way, just enough to remove the forked spade connector from the terminal block. You may want to save these wires for future use. It certainly is easier to install these while you're putting the track on a new module. You just set them aside. The blue and the gray wires are for the 3rd track. If you have a 2-track module like this one, remove the blue and the gray wires and simply set them aside. Leave the bus harness intact. Don't remove the blue and the gray wires from the bus. The harness is completely color-coded. Each of the independent grounds has its own color. The white wire goes with the black wire, the blue wire goes with the gray wire, and the red wire goes with the brown wire. So let's install our track feeds into the appropriate terminals. And if you have a 3rd track, then the common for the blue wire is the gray wire. Since we don't, we'll just re-secure the screws tightly. Check and make sure all of your terminals are tight. If they are not, re-secure them until they are. And this completes the installation process. We're now going to demonstrate how to attach the pigtails from the harness to an existing module. If your module pigtails are not at least 16 gauge, or you want to replace them with larger ones, or the pigtails on your module are not in the best of shape anymore, this is how to do it. You'll need a Dremel or other tool to clean the track in order to solder the wires on with your soldering iron and electrical solder. You'll also need a drill with an appropriate sized drill bit to put the wires through the table. Begin by cleaning off a bit of the rail on one of the outer rails and the center rail on both tracks, or if you have a 3rd track on all 3. Somewhere around the bottom flange of the rail. The location you do it is not super critical. If you have a center brace, you want to be on the terminal strip side of the center brace, and you want to move far enough away from center that you don't drill your holes through the bottom of the terminal block. About 16 inches or so from the end of the module is good. After you've cleaned up the track, using your drill, drill an appropriately sized hole next to the spot that you just cleaned. Next, turn the module over These are the new pigtails that come with the module. The first thing you'll have to do is remove your old pigtails from the module so that they're not hanging loose. The easiest way to do this is simply to cut them flush to the bottom of the module. Hopefully when you do this, tools will not come flying at you from behind the camera. Once you've removed the old pigtails, put them with your old harness, which should be given to the club for copper recycling. This module, because it's only 2 tracks, does not need the blue and the gray pigtails for the middle track. You can simply remove them and set them aside. Save them in case you ever decide to add the 3rd track so that you can easily add the wires. The red and the brown are for the inner loop. The white and the black are for the outer loop. Find the holes that you just drilled and insert the wires through the holes. And then turn the module back over. With the wires in the appropriate spots, you can now take the opportunity to trim them to the approximate appropriate length. And then, I'm just going to press them back through. Don't do this. You can strip the ends of the wire. And a bit of solder. Tin the end of the wire. And then solder it to the track in the spot that you just cleaned. Check your connection by pulling on the wire from below, and it should not come off. Repeat for all other wires, checking your connections as you go. This concludes the wire installation.